I drove carefully through the late evening traffic, heading across London to the Marriott Hotel. My mind was swarming with thoughts of all sorts of atrocities that I had pondered as an appropriate response to my situation. No matter what happened in the next few hours, the lives of at least 3 people would never be the same again. And how many of them would even be able to live after this night was unknown? My name is Sal, short for Salvatore. I am of Italian descent. My parents have lived in the UK since the late 1960s. The family business is the ubiquitous Italian restaurant, which has been the mainstay of my family and the many cousins and other relatives who make up the extended part of it. We are a very close-knit family, but unlike in times past, we don't live with each other on a daily basis. Family events are always crowded, and no one wants to be someone who isn't there and endure the stares of my grandmother, the matriarch, the one who must always be obeyed, no matter what. I married Connie 7 years ago. We were both in our early 30s at the time. It was as if we were drawn to each other after a relationship that went nowhere. And while it was satisfying, it didn't have what it takes for a long-term relationship. We dated, partied, and had fun for almost 2 years before we made up our minds and got married. My grandmother never liked Connie. She seemed to just tolerate her. She was never overtly rude, but there was always a look of distrust in her gaze at Connie, as if she was waiting for her to somehow cross the line, as if she had her finger on the trigger, waiting for it to happen. How do women know or sense these things? It's beyond my comprehension. At times she struggled to hide her feelings for my wife, but she never voiced her opinion in front of strangers. Shortly before our wedding, she said to me, "Watch out for that Sal, she has that look in her eye. Be careful and always guard your heart." That was all she said, but for some reason her words echoed in my head as I drove through the traffic-filled streets of London. I had nowhere to rush. I knew exactly where I was going, and if there was any change in my evening, I would get a text or a call on my cell phone. I joined the flow of traffic on Marylebone Road, which as usual was quite dense, even though the time was well past 9 in the evening. The bright lights of the city glowed in the darkness of the streets, and I turned towards the city's center as my heart and breathing seemed to quicken. It won't be long now, I thought to myself. Then this farce will be over. A month ago, I found out that my wife was seeing a guy on a regular basis and doing dirty deeds with him. Well, at least once every 2 weeks. This had been going on for at least 6 months, as I found out after doing a little digging on my own. How did I figure it out? It turned out to be very simple, even simpler than I would have thought. One night, she made a tiny mistake that made me think that all was not well. That day, I found a pen. One of those cheap pens they give out in hotels. I couldn't figure out where it came from, but I know I hadn't stayed at that particular hotel before. When I have to travel, which is usually once a month, I always use a reputable chain. I save up loyalty points, but it's not that important. So one evening, as we were out walking, I asked Connie if she had a pen, and she pulled out a biro from her voluminous purse. As soon as I finished using it, I saw the writing and a little alarm bell rang in my head. I knew I wasn't staying at this hotel, and I couldn't think of why my wife would want a pen from this hotel, so I was somewhat puzzled. Connie silently put the pen back in her bag. I didn't say anything, but decided I needed to look into it and see if there was anything I should be worried about. It may have been small and insignificant, but it was a tiny crack in our marriage that could be the source of cataclysmic damage. I can't explain why, but at that moment I just put it out of my mind and didn't dwell on it while we went out to eat and drink with friends. It was a regular practice for me and 2 other couples to get together from time to time to eat dinner and then drink and dance at the end of the night. We were sitting at the lounge bar of our favorite restaurant when the proverbial pen appeared. It was our usual spot, cozy, casual, with a relaxing atmosphere. Plus, it was run by one of my cousins, so of course, healthy family discounts were in effect, which my family in turn reciprocated. The discounts were enough to show respect, but not so much as to offend the owner. Respect was given and received. It was a two-way thing that worked. The other 2 couples were Carlo and his wife Joanna, and Phil and his wife Terry. Carlo and Joanna were older than us by 5 years or so. We were related to them. Distant relatives, of course, but relatives nonetheless. Carlo was a bit old-fashioned in some respects and led an interesting life, although not everything about it was within the law. When Connie had first met him, he had taken her by surprise, but a nicer, kinder, and gentler man could not have been wished for, unless you upset him. One word, don't. Carlo was like a big brother to me. He was always there for me, kept me out of trouble, and solved problems easily a couple times. His wife, Joanna, was a beautiful woman. She adored Carlo, and they were the perfect couple. He was big, she was petite, pretty, but feisty. She was the only person Carlo feared. He adored her, and he didn't care who knew it. I met Phil at my job, and as it turned out, we got along very well. He was the same age as me and had a similar outlook on life. We played golf together from time to time and socialized with his wife Terry at the golf club, so it was all good. Terry became friends with Connie, and they often spent days on end spending huge sums of money buying God knows what and wasting a lot of time doing it. All I could see were the large bags Connie would bring in the door after one of these expeditions. Whereas Phil was always warm and friendly, Terry seemed aloof at times, especially lately. Then she seemed to snap out of it and become part of the group. I often thought there was something wrong with her, and I mentioned it to Connie more than once, but she brushed it off, saying it was the usual woman problems that arise when a woman doesn't want to explain something. We were sitting in the lounge area sipping cocktails when Carlo and Joanna walked in. I stood up and greeted him, and we all hugged and exchanged kisses. The waiter brought fresh drinks to our table just a minute after Carlo and Joanna joined us. Connie was always amazed at the way we were taken care of when we traveled somewhere. My cousin knew there were 6 of us and indicated that our table was ready. We were escorted to our usual corner table, secluded but facing the door, something Carlo always insisted on wherever he went, but we didn't bother to ask him why. "Are Phil and Terry coming?" Joanna asked Connie. "I talked to her earlier and she said they're definitely coming, but they might be a little late since Phil hasn't gotten home yet." Carlo just looked at the 2 women and glanced at me. I looked at him, but he only shook his head imperceptibly, and I left it at that, but asked Carlo about it later. As we were finishing the first glass, Phil and Terry appeared, both looking a little flushed, but it was for a reason. Carlo just stared at them, his face expressing nothing, impassive. I saw that look again. He knew there was definitely something here. We sat down at the table and were soon chatting about work, our days, and the usual conversations about families and kids. After a great lunch, we went back to the lounge area and there was music in the air. By this time, the girls were itching to get on the dance floor and work off the calories they had gained. We 3 guys sat for a while, sipping another cocktail and chatting, discussing, of course, sports, and admiring the beauties performing in front of us. Our wives giggled and cheered us on. The dance floor was busy to the max. There was a lively crowd here tonight. Nothing outrageous or out of control, just people having a good time. The girls had already returned to our table and were sipping their drinks when the music switched to a slower tempo. It was a signal for us to do our duty and see them off. I felt Connie pressed up against me, eliciting a response, to which she grinned. She continued her endeavors, and I was already thinking of ways to get her home. After the first number, Carlo led Joanna back to the table, and when I looked over, I saw Phil and Terry still lying on the floor, but it looked like they were a little stiff with each other. "Are those 2 okay?" I whispered to Connie. "Yeah, I think so, but Terry hasn't said anything." I looked around again. Something was clearly wrong. Connie pulled me away and tried to distract me. We walked back to the table. Carlo only smiled at me and Joanna giggled. Phil and Terry walked over to the table. Terry grabbed her purse and announced she was going to the bathroom, which signaled the exodus of the women. And we 3 guys were left sitting looking at each other. "Everything okay, Phil?" Carlo asked coldly. "Yeah, sure, no problem, but probably too much." He raised his glass and pointed to another portion. Fresh drinks arrived before the women had even returned from the conference. Terry slid into the booth with Phil, and their body language gave them away. Connie looked at me. Something in her gaze told me that all was not well here, and she looked away. We glanced over, trying hard not to mention the elephant in the room. Carlo nudged me with his knee under the table. I turned around and he winked at me. He knows something. A few more dances with changing partners, as we usually did, helped ease the tension until it was time to leave. My cousin caught a cab at the prearranged time and we got ready to leave. I looked over and saw Connie talking to Phil at the other end of the room. They looked animated and at the same time making a conscious effort to look cool. I noted this as another oddity of the evening and decided I would ask her about it later, or maybe not. We said our goodbyes and the cab parted ways. "So what's up with Phil and Terry?" I asked bluntly. "Nothing, they're fine." She smiled and looked out the window at the lights whizzing by. I sat in silence, not for the first time thinking that something was wrong here. I didn't know what, but something was going on. I decided I would contact Carlo in the morning. Connie had tried to shake the shit out of me this night, but even with the alcohol inside, I was giving as good as I was getting. Wow, that was amazing, babe. We should do it again real soon. She smiled at me. I hope you remember that I love you and I want to do it again, Sal. I love you, Sal. Don't forget that. I looked at her. She seemed strange. There was some hint in her, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I love you too, baby. Don't ever forget that. You're my wife. No one will take you away from me, and I'll never give you a reason to. I hugged her tightly, covering her face with kisses. We fell asleep, and I lay staring at the ceiling and remembered the strange events of the evening. I must call Carlo first thing. The next morning, Connie was already up and out the door to head to the gym early, and I hung around the house drinking glass after glass of orange juice to clear my head. I sat down at my laptop and typed into Google the name of the hotel written on the pen I'd seen in her purse. The search yielded results, and I checked the location. The hotel was on the other side of London from us, but it was easy to get to and there was parking on site. It looked very posh. I wrote down the phone numbers and email address, but saw that they also had the option to book online. I had to check the history to see if there was anything there. I checked. Nothing. Nothing at all. The history had been erased. I smelled another rat. My paranoia was getting out of control. I called Carlo. Carlo, it's Sal. So what's going on with Phil and Terry? I get the impression you know something. Should I be worried? Sal, meet me at my brother's bar around mid-afternoon, then I'll tell you everything I know, but it's better not over the phone, okay? Sure, I'll be there. Sal, go by yourself. Okay? Yeah, sure, I understand. The line cut off. Now I was worried. And should I have been worried? I was worried. I sat staring at the phone while my stomach began to slowly churn and I didn't like what I felt inside. An hour or so later, Connie burst through the door. She looked refreshed. Her hair was still damp from her shower and a blush was playing on her cheeks. Did you have a good workout? I asked. Yeah, it was great. I needed it, babe. She threw her purse on the table and tossed her gym bag on the floor. I'm going to meet Carlo. He wants to talk about something, but it won't take long. What does he want, Sal? He still gives me the creeps, even though he's a Navy SEAL. Yeah, he's a great guy, but I wouldn't want to get on his good side. No way. And don't ever mistake him for a Navy SEAL. I'm not going to fall in love for long, okay? Connie looked at me, another look I couldn't read. What the hell was going on? There was some kind of vibe coming from everyone around me that was starting to bother me. I got in my car and slowly drove across town to Carlo's brother's house. It was a large, unremarkable building that housed a luxurious and trendy bar in North London. Well, not really a bar, more of a drinking club for those in the know. Before I could press the bell, the door opened and Carlo stepped aside to invite me in, casting a quick glance outside, as if checking to see if I was being followed. I watched him curiously. Okay, Carlo, what the hell is going on? Your call made me freak out. And with some other things going on, I'm getting worried, and I don't know what to worry about, if anything. He looked me in the eye and said, "Follow me." I followed him through the bar and into the back rooms where there was an office set up as a workspace. He closed the door behind me and we sat down on either side of a large oak desk. Sal, you are very dear to me, so I want you to listen to me carefully. I promised your old man that I would always take care of you and I won't break my word. What I'm going to tell you is going to hurt, but you have to listen to me, okay? I flinched when I saw the pain in his eyes. Possible options flashed through my mind, but in my hind mind I knew it had something to do with my wife. My heart pounded in my chest. This man had been close to me my whole life, and I knew my father was as close to him as he was to his own son. He was a cousin, but had lived with us since he was a child. I knew almost nothing about his parents, only that they had been murdered together. My father immediately made arrangements and took him in, and he had been my brother ever since. He opened the top drawer of the desk he was sitting at and pulled out a large manila envelope, carefully holding it out to me. My gaze was fixed on it like a venomous snake ready to strike. I knew instinctively that the moment I opened the envelope, my life would change forever. As I slowly reached for the snake, Carlo's hand came down on it. I looked up fearfully and saw the pain in his eyes again. This is bad, isn't it? He looked at me and held my gaze. Nodding slightly was all he gave me. Sal, remember I'm here for you, okay? He lifted his big hand and I pulled the snake towards me. I picked it up and felt it get heavier. I think it was full of venom. Carlo watched me pull the contents of the envelope from its hiding place, and as I opened it, I saw the poison that began to work on my mind and heart. I saw pictures. Large, glossy pictures of a woman and a man doing it. They were easy to identify. They were taken in a cheap hotel room. There were others, clearly taken at a different time and in more normal surroundings, and looking through a shroud of tears, I saw my wife on her own bed naked with a man. Sal, are you okay? I continued to flip through the pictures, and each one hurt my heart, the pain in my chest growing as I watched my marriage disintegrate before my eyes. I looked up at Carlo, my face wet with stinging tears. What? How? When did you do this? Who is he? My eyes widened with shock, fear, and a little bit of anger. Sal, a few weeks ago I heard whispers that Connie was up to something. I didn't have any proof until a couple days ago when we all went outside. Some things I know for sure, but there are things I'm still working on. As for how, a friend of mine recognized her when he saw her in a restaurant in South London. He thought the guy she was with was too friendly to treat a married woman like that in public. Sal, they thought they were outside the neighborhood and safe, I guess. And who is Tony Drew? Yes, you must know him. He's Phil's brother. I sat as mesmerized as his words reached me. Images of our evening, of Phil and Connie, and then Terry came to mind. I found a pen from the hotel in London. Is it here? Yes, Sal. Sorry, mate, but my boyfriend followed them up early last week. I understand you were out of town. The first meeting happened when you weren't home either. I stared at him, my heart tensing, my fist clenching and unclenching. I'm going to kill that bastard, I spat out. Easy, Sal. You could get in trouble and she doesn't know how to sit back and neither does he. Divorce that bitch, get rid of her, and let me deal with him. No, Carlo, as much as I respect you, I can't let that happen. I have to deal with the bastard myself, and he needs to know I did it. Is he married? Do you know where he lives and works and all that? I have information that is in the envelope that will give Sal the answer, but don't do anything rash. We have to plan this carefully, and we don't want to end up in jail, do we? He's not married, but as far as I can tell, he's divorced. No kids. But he likes women, especially married ones. Maybe he doesn't want a commitment or something. Anyway, he shouldn't have stuck his nose in our pond. He'll regret it. His eyes turned cold when he said that, and I had no doubt that nothing good was going to end for my wife's lover. Okay, so what are you up to? I was still breathing hard and fast, but slowly pulling myself together as best I could. Before answering, he poured me a whiskey. How well do you get along with your friend Phil, I asked, because he was acting a little strange at the restaurant with Terry and your wife. I was watching him. I think he knows what's going on, if that's the case. Can you call him a friend anymore? I saw it too, and I wonder if his wife is involved, judging by the way they were acting. I don't see the point in sticking around any longer than necessary. Sal, I think we should put the hammer down as soon as possible. But before that, you need to see a lawyer. That is if you want to get rid of her. Or are you going to try and make peace with her? If this was an isolated incident, then maybe, but seeing something like this, I just can't come to my senses. It's all too much. The images will stay in my head every time I look at it. I won't be able to forgive or forget. I understand, but in that case, you need to start defending yourself right now. It might take some time, but if you plan it out first, you'll at least get some payoff. And trust me, you need it. I need to think about it, Carlo. I want them both to suffer, really suffer. He leaned forward and placed a business card in front of me. The guy who handles divorces, he's ruthless, takes no prisoners. Everything is strictly by the book, no frolicking. I've already briefed him on your situation. All you have to do is call him and tell him go, and he'll take care of everything. Trust me, he's a good one. Besides, he's a cousin. He laughed at that. We had cousins everywhere, and I couldn't help but smile. We sat like that for another hour until we came up with a plan of action. I called Cousin Carlo, and he got right to work. We agreed not to serve until everything was ready. In the meantime, I needed to find out how involved Phil and his wife Terry were. I left Carlo's and drove slowly toward the house, my overloaded brain fighting for sanity. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingerprints were probably still on it. I parked the car and headed for the door, but when I crossed the threshold, I didn't hear a sound. Connie was gone. On the kitchen table, I found a note. See you and Terry later, love you. I rolled it up and threw it in the trash. I called Carlo. She's gone to Terry's. That's what she says. I know she's at Phil and Terry's right now, but Terry's not there, just Phil. There's a guy looking after her like we agreed, and he'll be with her as long as we need him, okay? Sure, where's Terry then? If that's who she was going to meet. If anything turns up in Sala, I'll let you know on your cell phone, okay? I sat down and looked at my watch. 3 hours later, Connie came home. Hi, love. How was your day? She burst into the house, and after kissing me on the cheek, she headed into the kitchen. It was fine. Carlo wanted to discuss something with me, but we're working on a plan on how to handle it. She looked at me, expecting me to give her the details, but I didn't. I wanted her to ask me herself. After a while, she asked, It's just a personal cousin problem that needs to be sorted out. He thinks his wife is making a fool of him, so he needs some advice. I smiled at her, noticing the change in her expression as she tried to hold back her casual smile. I'm sure it'll work out. She averted her gaze, but I knew I'd still upset her a little. The rest of the weekend passed slowly. I couldn't bring myself to have sex with her no matter how much I wanted to. I kept seeing the pictures Carlo showed me of her and that bastard Tony. I couldn't understand how she could do it with him and still act normal around me. She was a much better liar and actress than I could have ever imagined. Saturday night went fine, but Sunday night she came over to my house and I could tell from her demeanor that she wanted to have some fun. Sal, I need us to spend the night. I know you've been busy, but I need you now. Please. She whimpered. I did what I had to do. We made love. Afterward, we lay on our backs panting. What happened, Sal? We've never done this before? She looked a little shocked. I'm not sure. I just wanted to make sure you were mine. I think I love you, Connie, and I don't want to lose you, so I thought this might help. You won't lose me, silly. She threw her leg over mine, looking down at me. I'm all yours, love. I kissed her lightly on the lips as her words tore at my heart. I had the image of her with Tony in front of me, so how could she only be mine? Damn lying whore. We lay quietly in bed, each with our own thoughts. I was disgusted and hurt that Connie could lie to me like that. I was angry and getting angrier by the minute. I slipped out of bed as soon as she fell asleep and went downstairs. I poured a large glass of JD and sat down at the computer. A message from Carlo appeared on the screen. I checked the time. It was just over 1 o'clock in the morning. All the wheels are turning here and everything is happening exactly as we discussed. Great, I thought. Now all that's left to do is arrange a short overnight stay for Wednesday, and we'll be on our way. I texted him back, okay? An hour later, I crawled back into bed and tried to sleep again, but the rage wasn't helping, and eventually I dozed off and managed to get a few hours of not too much sleep. I crawled out of bed and took a shower before getting dressed and heading downstairs. Connie greeted me with a smile and breakfast, coffee and toast. She moved a little cautiously in the morning, noticed my gaze, and smiled. You were a little wild last night, lover. I don't think I'll be ready for another round for a few days. She put her arms around my neck and kissed me again. I sighed and she pulled away. It's okay, I smiled through a coughing fit. She sat up and sipped her coffee. I need to stop by Leeds on Wednesday, do you mind? She looked at me over her cup and I could almost see her brain working. Just for one night? She asked carelessly. Yes, but I won't be back until late Thursday night. Does it have anything to do with Carlo? Yes, and that cousin I told you about is nothing special, but he might need some support. Carlo gives me the creeps. I'm not sure what kind of support he can offer. You'd be surprised what a good friend he can be, but I wouldn't want to run into him, whether they're related or not. He has a knack for solving problems, too. I saw her face go slightly pale, but the plan was still being born in her head. I looked at my watch and got up to leave. I have to go, honey. I'll see you later, and be a good girl while I'm gone. Before she could get up, I kissed the top of her head and walked through the door to the garage. I pulled out of the garage and drove down the driveway. I drove to meet the lawyer and spent an hour with him discussing options and signing papers. He was alert and had already gotten copies of the contents of the envelope. He confirmed that everything would be ready by Wednesday afternoon and I could pick up the paperwork. I ran to the bank and transferred all the money from our savings to a new account set up in my name only, and sent a large sum to Carlo to keep in my name as well. The current account stayed the same. It covered all the bills, so there was hardly any free money in it. I emptied our safe of cash and jewelry and opened a new account in my name only at a different bank. I also stopped paying her allowance, from which she was funding her account. This would hit her fast, and she would be in trouble by the end of the month, I was sure. Satisfied, I went to my office and went about my routine daily business. My secretary, Sadie, was an excellent assistant, and I knew she could run the ship without me and seemed to be doing a much better job of it. In between signing papers, I caught her eyes on me. I sighed and turned my chair around so that I was looking directly at her. I'd known her for almost 5 years, and she'd always been nothing but professional and fiercely loyal, to the point where it seemed like a defense. With Connie, she had always been polite and calm. But there was some hidden connection between them, I was sure. Connie had told her several times about her attitude toward her, but I had always brushed it off, thinking it was a woman's problem, and between them. I looked at her oval face, piercing dark blue eyes staring at me with concern. I knew I had to say something. I felt the need to tell someone something. My insides were all churning, and she knew it. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts and control my emotions. Sadie, there are going to be some things happening this week that might get in the way, so if I'm not around, you know what to do to make it work, okay? Yes, boss? You can count on me. Is there anything I can help you with? Sadie was a married woman in her early 40s, smart and elegant, whom I trusted unconditionally. I looked at her and she seemed to read my innermost thoughts. Connie's having fun with me. You're kidding. My God, Sal, that's terrible. Are you sure? I mean, do you know for sure? I just nodded slowly. She saw the tears glistening in my eyes and closed the door between us. She hugged me tightly as she stood next to me. I felt this woman's love and realized that this was what I was missing at home. I sobbed for the first time since I found out a few days ago, and she held me until I could pull myself together again. She took my face in her hands and looked into my eyes. Sal, you're a good person. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, okay? What are you going to do? Get a divorce and kick the bastard's ass? Well, yeah, something like that, but I don't want to drag you or anyone else into it, Sadie. Please understand. Don't do anything stupid, Sal. Please be careful. The rest of the day passed in suspense. But Sadie was worth her weight in gold, and judging by the way she looked after me, her husband was a lucky man. She fended off all comers and just dealt with any shit in her inimitable manner. One day I heard her tell someone to just back off. I smiled. How nice to have good people like her around me. At home, I was sitting with Connie watching TV when the phone rang and she went out into the hallway to answer it. I could hear her talking quietly, but not enough to realize what was going on. About 5 minutes later, she returned. What's wrong? I asked curiously. Oh, nothing. It's just Terry talking about her and Phil fighting about nothing again, as usual. I just want them to either make up or break up. They're driving me crazy. What do you mean? Are they in big trouble? Phil never mentioned that. I watched her face, looking for anything that might give her away. Well, I guess it's both something and nothing. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Is that what was going on when we were at the restaurant? Connie looked at me nervously. She didn't know that I had noticed something between them and that she was in on it too. Now she had started this series of lies and was in it up to her neck. I smiled inwardly at her awkwardness, but I still couldn't figure out what Terry and Phil had to do with it unless they were related. Yeah, they had a fight before they went out and then they were simmering all night. Is that what you were doing with Phil? She visibly flinched. I mean, tried to help them resolve their argument? Yeah, Terry asked me to talk to Phil, that's all. So what about Connie? Maybe I can help. I smiled inwardly as I watched my wife begin to tie herself in knots. It's okay, Sal. I'm sure they've pretty much sorted it out by now. Good, I'm glad to hear that. I don't like it when a friend has marriage problems. He's not cheating, is he? No, nothing like that. Her face reddened. So this is Terry playing a trick on himself then? Look, Sal, I don't know what OS is. Let's mind our own business and leave them alone. She snorted. I think so too, but I might mention it to Phil when I see him to make sure he's okay. Her eyes narrowed as I looked at the TV again, obviously ending the conversation. After a few minutes, I asked carelessly, so if none of them are playing and Terry asked you to talk to Phil, what was it about? Sal, for God's sake, leave him alone. She got up off the couch and ran out of the room. I sat back and giggled. realizing that I had hit a nerve with her and now I would have to find out what the other couple's role was in the affair. We spent the rest of the evening carefully avoiding each other, but it seemed to suit us both, and we hardly talked about anything. I decided that tomorrow I would drop in on Phil and Terry and bother them a bit. It was dangerous, of course. My wife could guess that I knew what was going on, but I couldn't resist giving them at least a little tug on the chains. The next day, Tuesday, I got up early and was just about to head out the door when Connie came down the stairs. She was still in a sleepy state, but I kissed her politely on the cheek as I passed her on my way to the garage. "I can't stop, love. I have to go. I have a lot to do before I leave tomorrow. Love you." Connie watched bewildered as I disappeared through the doorway, and seconds later heard my car pull out of the driveway and rush down the highway. Pouring herself a cup of coffee, she sat down at the table and thought about Tony. Everything had been so good until the last week. She had met Tony one night a few months ago when she was out with Terry. They were at a small club with a few friends when he walked in there. Seeing his sister-in-law, he walked over to the group and, smiling, offered everyone a drink. The girls smiled as they looked at the handsome man who was considering them all. Terry noticed Tony and Connie looking into each other's eyes, and something flashed between them. "Stay away from Tony. He's a real piece of shit. He's even hit on me before. He goes after anyone with a pulse, especially the married ones." "Don't worry, Terry. I have my own Sal, but he's a pretty smooth and good-looking guy. Haven't you even been mildly tempted?" Terry shook her head, looking at her friend. "One word, don't." Terry was doing her friendly duty, but she could see there was something going on behind her friend's eyes that she didn't like. The rest of the evening passed without incident as far as she could tell. However, Tony cornered Connie and gave her his phone number. Over the next few days, Tony somehow managed to get Connie's number, and he called her a couple times to spend a few innocent minutes chatting and flirting. By the time of the next bachelorette party, she knew Tony would be there again. This time there was dancing on the program, and as soon as Tony had her in his arms, he set to work seducing her. He showered her with flattery and compliments, making many small touches as they chatted. It wasn't until Terry grabbed her elbow that she realized she had spent the entire evening with him. She walked out of the club with her friend, who firmly told her off and urged her to stop it before anything bad happened. Connie wouldn't listen and brushed off her warnings, saying that nothing bad had happened. As Terry led her away, Tony smiled. He wanted Connie and would get her sooner or later. Of that he was sure. Over the next few weeks, the phone calls became regular, the flirting intensified, and the seduction of Connie began in earnest. That all changed when Terry had to cancel their usual night out, and during one of the calls, Tony saw an opportunity. He managed to convince Connie to meet him alone at the club, as friends, of course. Connie had been thinking about it for a long time, but now the opportunity presented itself and she immediately agreed. She dressed as usual to meet Terry, but it was different. She felt different. She had been hanging out with Tony. They had developed a relationship, and now she was ready to take it to the next level. She blushed as she thought about it. Maybe the kisses, or maybe the kisses themselves. Who knows? Grabbing her purse, she almost jogged towards the front door. This night was a first, and it was inevitable that there would be more in the future. They had spent a hot evening. Tony was a skilled seducer. He walked her to her car and drove her to the Marriott Hotel. After spending quite a bit of time there, she saw the time. Connie almost panicked. In her hurry to get cleaned up and dressed, she asked Tony to take her home as soon as possible. It would still take at least another 30 minutes. She texted Sal to say she was waiting for a cab and would be home soon. The night had given Connie a big scare, but when she got home, Sal was already asleep, so she crawled into bed and hoped it would go away on its own in the morning. The night passed without incident, but her body still glowed and tingled at every thought of Tony entertaining her. She couldn't help but smile. For the next few weeks, not only did Connie not turn down the occasional bachelorette party with Tony, but she met up with him during the day at every opportunity. During a sleepover at Sal's, she spent the night with Tony at a hotel. After a few weeks, Terry guessed what Connie was up to and warned her friend to stop before she got caught. She even had a fight with her husband Phil over it and asked him to press Tonti to stop before things went south. Terry told Connie to calm down and that she had talked to Tony and also asked Phil to intervene. Tony was unsociable, arrogant, and dismissive of Terry and his brother. Phil was torn between loyalty to his brother and loyalty to his friend Sal. It didn't help that Connie had lashed out at him in a restaurant when he asked her to stop seeing his brother, while he was getting it in the neck from his wife. He was between a hammer and anvil, and there was no way out. The longer this went on, the harder it became to find a way out without causing serious problems. Connie knew it had to end soon, and realized that the risk she was taking only made her more eager to continue. It was dangerous. If Sal found out about this, all hell would break loose. The scene in the restaurant was too close for comfort, and when Sal asked what was going on, things spiraled out of control. She sat sipping his coffee and thought back to her affair. She knew he didn't love her and didn't want her in any way other than as an easy bed, but she was still drawn to him. She decided that tomorrow it would be over, that this would be the last time that she had to end it, but they would have one more night together. She was relieved that the decision had been made, but of course she still had to convince Tony of that as well. By the time I walked in the door, it was late. I had been trying to kill time all day and the plans were already made. The paperwork from the lawyer was already in my car, and the official packet of documents was to be delivered by registered mail. Feeling the tension, I immediately headed for my trusty bottle of JD and poured a large glass. Connie watched me take a big sip and pour another. I was upset, and looking at Connie, I was sure she was dealing with her own problems too. "Are you okay, Sal?" I didn't answer at first, taking another sip of my JD. I turned around and focused my gaze on her. I could see her reaction. She looked scared, worried, and had an almost noticeable shiver running through her. "I've just had a rough day, that's all, sweetheart. I need to take a shower and then get ready to talk to Carlo tomorrow." I walked past her and disappeared up the stairs before she realized I hadn't kissed her. She didn't like this atmosphere. It scared her, and she knew why. But tomorrow it would be over. What did he mean by saying he had to get ready for tomorrow? She realized she knew nothing more about what he was doing. I stood under the hot jets of water, tears streaming from my eyes. My marriage, my wife, my future. It was all so messed up. After 30 minutes under the shower, I didn't feel any better, even though I was cleansed. My heart was breaking and I wanted to run away and hide. I was shaking and I wasn't sure I could last much longer. Stepping out of the shower, I wiped myself dry and dressed, then headed downstairs. Connie gave me a look as I walked into the kitchen. I picked myself up and pulled myself together. I had a game face now. She relaxed a bit too, pulling herself together, and I noticed it. Oddly enough, we both knew something was wrong and tried our best not to ask questions that would ruin it. "What's for dinner?" I asked as casually as possible. "I thought we could order something for a change. I don't feel like cooking tonight." "Sure, no problem. Chinese food would be okay?" "Yeah, that would be good." I called, and while we waited, we sat in the living room to the sound of the TV. Like two prize fighters, we looked at each other without drawing attention or wanting the confrontation that was in the air. Dinner passed quietly, almost in suspense. "What time do you have to go in the morning?" she asked carelessly. Carelessly, she asked. Carelessly, she asked. "I'll be out around 9 in the morning. We have a flight booked for 11, so we don't need to rush. It won't take long, though. The problem is we won't be able to meet her until tomorrow night. But anyway, it'll be great to finally meet Cousin Carlo. You know what family is like." It was almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and I thought she glanced at her watch. "I need to turn to Love. It's going to be a long day tomorrow." I stood up, drained my glass, and set it on the table. I looked at her, and I thought I saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. She stood up and closed the door between us. "I want you to know, Connie, I've always loved you like no one else." I hugged her tightly. She felt his arms around her, and her heart filled with sadness and guilt. "Tomorrow it will all be over," she thought to herself, "and then I can make it up to him." I thought almost the same thing. I woke up to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, which I always loved in the morning. It brought back memories of my grandmother's house where they always made coffee. Strong and dark, an incomparable odor. I walked down the stairs towards the strong aroma of the nectar. Connie was waiting for me with a large mug in her hands. I took it and kissed her cheek before taking a sip of the oily liquid that helped me fully awake. I sat down at the table and ate some toast, citing a rather full stomach after last night's dinner. As we drank our coffee, there was silence in the kitchen. Each of us was watching the other, but averting our gaze so as not to be noticed. It was tense, and we both wanted it to be over. I glanced at my watch. "I have to go, honey. I have to be at Carlo's to pick him up." I stood up and set the cup on the drain, emptying it. I felt myself take a deep breath and a wave of emotion rose in my chest. I suppressed a sob, almost passing out. I looked at Connie and saw that she was trying to stay calm, but damn, she was tense. She must have realized what I knew. She looked up at him and smiled as he walked past her. Have a safe trip and come back soon, Sal. She watched him walk past her and kiss her forehead politely, but the act puzzled her again. Grabbing his bag, he headed for the garage. Breathing a sigh of relief, I put the key in the ignition and started the car, which immediately started with a roar. The garage door lifted and I easily drove out into the cool morning air. With tears in my eyes, I spun the wheel and drove the car down the road away from my wife. I didn't look back, and I couldn't look back. My face was wet with tears and my heart was heavy with sadness. The day of judgment had come. After a few minutes, Connie picked up the phone and listened to the sound in my ear. He's gone. Are you still ready for tonight? Oh yeah, babe, definitely. We're going to have a good night. I had to tell Phil to back off, Tony. He's been getting on my nerves lately. Did he say anything to you? Yeah, but I told him to back off too, and his buddy wife too. She's bugging me too, but she hasn't said anything even though I know. Well, that won't stop us, baby. I'm looking forward to tonight. I talked my buddy into getting us the same room as before, so it's all good. Room 415, just grab the key from the desk, and I'll see you there at 8, okay? Okay, got it? I'll call you back later. The couple hung up and the man smiled. He typed a message with the details of the lovers' date, then picked up his listening equipment and left the post. Carlo saw the message and smiled grimly at Sal. Sitting in his office, he lamented his wife's callousness and then contemplated his plan for the evening. Are you sure you want to do this, Sal? I have to ask before this goes too far. You know how this is going to end, don't you? I looked at my lifelong friend, seeing the deep concern in his eyes, and heard the warning in his words. Carlo, I love that woman in a way I never have and never will. I gave her everything I had, and I can't let that go. I have to do something to make her realize what she's done and make her pay forever, just like her lover. I just have to do it, Carlo. Do you understand? Carlo nodded sadly, seeing the pain in Sal's eyes and feeling it in his words. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a revolver, placing it on the table in front of Sal. The man looked at it, taking in the details of the weapon that was going to solve part of his problem. We'll do whatever is necessary to make him realize what he's done, and to make sure he doesn't try anything like this again. You need a gun to prove your point, okay? He watched as Sal nodded silently, looking at the gun. Carlo pulled out a handful of shell casings and stacked them on the table next to the gun. The sight of the ammunition made it seem more real. Oh, you need to load it with Sal, if only to reinforce in your mind that this is what you want to do, okay? Sal reached out and picked up the gun. It was light to the touch, bringing back memories of the old days. Carlo watched his friend load the gun with practiced ease, then put it back on the table. What's up, Sal? Sal nodded. Okay, we've got a little time, so let's go grab a bite to eat and I'll fill you in on the details. I'm thinking of calling Terry and Phil, finding out how much they know and asking them why they didn't tell me about it. I'd leave it at that. If they catch you now, you'll provide the police with evidence of motive before it even happens. Leave it alone for now. There will be time later, don't worry. They walked to the entrance of the bar and Sal was introduced to Carlo's brother Alfredo. It's nice to finally meet you, Sal. He smiled and shook his hand. The three men sat and chatted amicably until a waitress entered, carrying plates of food that had obviously been prepared in advance without a word. The young waitress smiled at Sal, turned around and leaned toward him and said, Hi, Sal, my Uncle Carlo has told me a lot about you. Nice to meet you. I'm Alicia. Alfredo smiled at Sal and took his daughter aside. Sal, forgive my daughter for her temper. She is stubborn like everyone these days. Alfredo, I'm very happy to meet you and your whole family. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Family is everything, as I'm sure you know. Please give my best wishes to your wife and the rest of your family. Alfredo smiled. Thank you, I will. Dinner passed leisurely among the customers entering the restaurant, creating a bustle behind them. Considering what they were discussing, it was unreal and yet strangely relaxing. Sal felt calm and safe. After 3 in the afternoon, his cell phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw it was Connie. Hi, Connie. How are you? I'm calling to see if you're okay. How's Carlo and his little problem? We're both fine, thanks for asking. We're here, but we're having a late lunch before we head on. What do you have planned for tonight, love? He asked the question as he usually did, but he also wanted to hear her lie again. I'm going to visit Terry. I think everything is fine there. That's good. I was going to call Phil later anyway. I think he's meeting his brother today. I understand. I've never met him. What's he like? Oh, well, I've only met him once. He seems pretty nice. As far as I can tell, he looks like Phil. I have to run, Connie. We have to get to the hotel before our evening meeting, so have a nice evening and say hi to Terry. Okay, love you. Love you. Bye, baby. Bye. Disconnecting the call. Carlo looked up and saw pain, but also something else, anger, deep, burning anger. Something that he knew very well, and that was driving him down the path he had chosen in life until he met Joanna, and she did something to him that had never been done before. She made him fall in love and be with her. Okay, Sal? Yeah, looks like we're ready. The men raised their glasses and made a toast, drinking all the drinks in one fell swoop. The time to get some rest before the show. Let's go meet the guys. They left Alfredo at the bar and headed to the private quarters. There, they found a group of 4 men who greeted them by shaking Sal's hand and hugging Carlo. Sal are very good friends of mine. I trust them with my life and have done so many times in the past. They won't let you down. As I looked closer at the men, I saw that they were all a few years older than me and looked shabby, but their eyes were the same, steely, strong, and focused. I felt a shiver run through me. Reality was starting to get to me. Still want that Sal? Carlo asked coldly. Yes, I don't just want it, I need it. I looked at the men, who smiled at me, as if they realized how important this was to me as well. Okay, guys, is everything ready? Everything checked out? Are the cars in place, the van, hotel approach and evacuation routes, disposal? For the next 30 minutes, the plan and all the items Carlo had mentioned were discussed until everyone was sure everything was ready. I could feel their gazes on me as I paced around the room. I was tense and could feel the anger building up inside, and I wasn't sure I could control it for much longer. The realization that Connie was even now preparing to face Tony made me shudder. I wanted to punch someone or something. Carlo stepped toward me, blocking my path, and wrapped his big arms around me. Calm down, Sal, calm down. We'll be on our way soon. It'll get easier from here, son. Tears came to my eyes from frustration and anger mixed with feelings of betrayal and loss. Carlo walked beside me and the men looked at me and I felt their sympathy encompass me like some form of support. For the next hour, they all took turns talking and nudging me, as they needed me to play my part to the fullest as well. The mood was broken by the phone ringing, and everyone turned their heads in the direction of the pitiful sound. Carlo picked up the phone. Yes? Everyone strained to hear anything at all. Okay, we'll start moving in 5 minutes. I looked at my watch. It was already 8 o'clock. The time flew by unnoticed. The men left the room and headed to their car to drive the van to its destination. Carlo looked at Sal. He was anxious. Sal, last chance. You don't have to do this. That bastard has no respect for me or my family. I have to teach him a lesson he'll never forget, and I damn well intend to. Good man. Carlo clapped me on the shoulder with a meaty hand as we walked out the back door and got into the Mercedes prepared for us. That's how I got to where I parked the Mercedes on a side street about 200 yards from the hotel. We were sitting in silence when a little after 9 p.m., a text message arrived on Carlo's phone. He looked at it and nodded to me. They've arrived. My heart twitched. Carlo noticed my reaction and his hand rested on my shoulder, keeping me in touch with reality and trying to distract me from the thoughts in my head. Let's stick to Sal's plan, okay? I looked at him and nodded. I knew we'd have to wait at least another hour before we could leave. Another text came in. The guys are here and already in place. Carlo smiled nervously. Their role depended on us getting in and out of the hotel discreetly, or realistically speaking, as discreetly as possible. We sat and discussed what we should do, and Carlo reminded me again not to let my emotions get out of control. We don't want to start a riot and get into shit over these 2 idiots, okay? His cold eyes sank into mine as he looked at me, and I realized that this was it, and now wasn't the time to mess it up. Okay, Carlo. I'm not going to shoot the bastard in bed, even if I'm not that stupid. I smirked when he tilted his head. Don't bullshit me, Sal. This is serious shit. Get a grip, got it? I nodded. We sat in silence until another message popped up on his cell phone. We're in position. The exit is secured. Carlo glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was almost time. His heart began to quicken, as did his breathing. Carlo pulled his brass knuckles out of the glove compartment and opened the car door. He saw me looking, just in case. Okay, let's go. A moment later, I was already following him as he headed into the hotel lobby. We walked through the door and headed straight for the elevators, acting as casual as the other guests but avoiding eye contact. I tried my best to relax and stay calm, but I was tense as hell. We stood and waited for the elevator to go up to the second floor. The elevator beeped and the doors slowly opened. We had to step aside as the couple exited the elevator, and then we stepped inside and stood impassively as the doors closed. We watched in silence as the floor indicator slowly rose to the fourth floor. All too quickly, we pulled up to the lobby. The doors slowly opened, and my heart was already racing. Carlo got out first and led me into a room. I saw the numbers 415 on the door and realized my wife was on the other side of that door with another man. When we got to the door, the other four guys appeared as if out of nowhere. They were wearing hotel-like uniforms and pushing one of those laundry carts. But there were subtle differences. They were all wearing wool hats, which I knew were easy to remove so they wouldn't be recognized. And I also knew that at least one of them had a stun gun. I looked around and saw no one in the hallway. Carlo also noted that the security cameras were neutralized, and we figured we had about 5 minutes before anything unusual was noticed. We stepped back as the guys stood in front of the door. One of them held a key card up to the lock, and we all saw the light turn green and heard the door open with a click. As we slowly opened the door, we already knew the location of the room. The bedroom was at the end of the short hallway and away from the living room. We quickly headed towards the bedroom. As we passed through the living room, I recognized the underwear and dress on the floor. My heart sank even lower and my chest constricted as I realized I had seen it all before. We walked in silence to the open bedroom door. My face flushed. The guys avoided looking each other in the eye, but I could feel their sympathy. They were professional and focused. The plan was that the guys would go in first and get the bastard out of the room as quickly as possible, and then I would meet the bitch. Carlo led the guys into the bedroom. The lights were on and only faintly illuminated the room, but from my seat I could see Tony entertaining my wife. The damn couple didn't hear or see the men enter the room. The rumble of the laundry cart gave them away. The noise made Tony turn his head slightly, and his eyes bulged as he realized there was someone else in the room. At that moment, the stun gun hit him in the ass. The impact made his body arch and jerk, trying to recoil from the shocking burst of energy hitting his ass and passing through his body. Connie cried out as she felt him twitch and convulse on top of her. She didn't realize what was happening to her lover as she screamed and he continued to thrash in spasms. He collapsed on top of her and two pairs of hands grabbed his arms and started to pull him off my wife. It all happened so fast, the guys were nimble, and as Tony was pulled away from my wife and pulled out of her, she opened her mouth to scream but was immediately gagged. She looked up and was horrified to see masked men dragging her lover off the bed and into a laundry cart. In less than a minute, he was gone, wheeled out of the room and taken to an unknown destination. Connie tried to get up but found her hands, as well as her feet, bound tightly with duct tape. I turned on the overhead light and entered the room, looking at my wife lying on the bed, who until a few minutes ago had been in a fit of passion with this piece of human garbage who, like Elvis, had already left the building. She looked up at the masked men who stood looking at her. I grabbed my gun and pointed it at her face. She was squirming and trying to hide, squeezing her eyes tightly shut, crying and mumbling. I came very close and, without saying a word, looked into her eyes. I saw fear. I let it linger and flare up. I wanted her to be afraid. She had to be afraid. I could feel Carlo's gaze on me. He was afraid I was going to snap. I knew it. She saw my finger tense up, and in some strange way, she relaxed. Carlo started to move, but before he could do so, I pulled the trigger and Connie closed her eyes. I was beyond love, hate, and every possible emotion, but rage was paramount. When Carlo grabbed my arm, the trigger came down with a loud snap. Connie wet her pants, wetting the bed, and Carlo snatched the gun from my hand. He looked at me with his steely eyes and, taking a heavy breath, started laughing. His eyes were all that was visible, but they told me he was furious. Connie went mad with fear and then shock as she looked at the two men standing in front of her, looking down at her. She began shaking her head wildly from side to side, her tears flowing. I looked at her in disgust. She stared at the two silent men in front of her and didn't utter a word in the 2 minutes it took for her to ruin the evening and possibly the rest of her life. I stood silently for almost another minute, unmoving, looking at the bitch on the bed, her skin showing the paw marks of her lover. Her eyes were fixed on mine. I could feel her fear. I grasped the edge of the mask and pulled it off. She gasped and then passed out. I noticed a slight movement from Carlo, who was looking at his phone, and realized it was time for us to leave. I followed Carlo out of the room, leaving Connie lying on the bed. We slipped down the stairs and used the exit at the back of the hotel to escape into the dark city. A few minutes later, we were at the car. On the way back, we were silent, each busy with our own thoughts. Carlo started the engine and we rushed to the meeting place. "You took the bullets out, you bastard. I was worried for a second, thought you'd snapped." I grinned grimly. "Yeah, I didn't intend to kill the bitch, just scared the shit out of her. I guess the lesson will be learned when she sees Tony again. I'm sure the guys will do what they need to do with him. No need to get your hands dirty. Sal, I know it's important to you that he knows you were there, but I think he'll remember it for a long time. One way or another, I need to be sure of that." I stared grimly ahead as we made our way through the dark streets to our destination. We walked into a bar where Alfredo was waiting for us. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning, so he poured us healthy drinks, and we sat down in front of the fireplace in the back room. Gradually, as the adrenaline faded away, we began to feel human. I had been in a trance for the past few hours, a state where the real world was left out and only pain and anger lived on. Now, in the warmth of the back room, we sat and ate in silence. Carlo's phone beeped and he read the message and smiled at me. "Everything is all set and settled. The boys are on their way. I know I can't thank them enough for everything they've done, but I'll never forget this night. Sal, shut up, it's over. You have other battles now. Now you need to deal with that bitch. And you don't have to please me, okay?" Sure, I understand. Nothing more needed to be said. I remembered that we'd left her at the hotel and wondered how she'd get home and what, if anything, she'd say about her adventure. Well, I had the rest of the day to kill before I got home as I had planned. Now she knew I was aware of her activities, but would she say anything or confess? I somehow doubted it, even knowing and catching her in the act. "There are rooms prepared for both of you when you are ready." Fatigue came over me suddenly as I was led into my room, my clothes removed, and Alfredo took them to dispose of them before I collapsed onto the bed. Sleep didn't come as I mentally went over the events of the night and everything leading up to it. I also thought about Connie and the last time I had seen her. I was overcome with sadness and disgust at the same time. I had loved this woman for so long. She was my everything, and now it was all gone. All that was left was to face her and see how it would all end. I already had the divorce papers. She was supposed to deliver an official copy to our house today. By the time I was supposed to be home, she should have had no doubts about what I knew, but the thought suddenly occurred to me. What if she didn't come home? Now that she'd know it was me at the hotel, she'd be terrified and definitely wouldn't want to go home. Shit, I should call and have the papers rerouted, maybe to Terry's. Yes, she'd go there, I was sure of it. After almost 7 hours or so, I was awakened from an uncomfortable sleep by Alessia with a mug of coffee under her nose and a smirk on her face. "It's lunchtime, Sal. You have 30 minutes. Carlos said you have an afternoon flight, so it's time to get up. Your change of clothes are on the dresser." She patted me on the shoulder and left the room. Slowly, I got to my feet and got dressed. Looking in the mirror, I saw a familiar face, but it was different. I was different. Last night, I had almost killed a man. I had seen him being led to certain death, but I felt nothing. In that moment, I had no regrets. Whatever shit had befallen Tony was his own fault. I just hoped it would hurt like hell and for a long time. I joined the others at the table, and normalcy seemed surreal yet comforting. We ate, chatted, and even laughed. Pretty soon, it was time to leave. We packed up and headed to the car. Looking out the window as we drove away, I waved to the faces watching me leave. There was a mixture of pain and deep concern in them, and it was comforting in a way. I mentally promised myself to return as soon as possible and next time not to leave it so long. I drove home slowly, the kilometers ticking away, and like a countdown to Armageddon, I could feel the growing dread. For the moment, the anger was gone. All that was left was a huge hole that was being filled with love for my wife. I dropped Carlo off, and Joanna walked out to meet him, grabbed him as he got out of the car, and hugged him like they were newlyweds. I felt a lump rise up in my throat as she walked over to me and hugged me tightly. Sal, it's going to be okay, understand? Tomorrow will come for you. I know things will seem hard for a while, but trust me, it's going to be okay. I couldn't speak, but Carlo gave me a manly hug, and I headed home to face the bitch. Call me later, Sal. I nodded and drove off. Trying not to think about anything, I felt empty. I put the key in the door and turned it. The house was empty. The heating was on, so it was warm, but not very cozy. There were no sounds to be heard. I walked cautiously into the living room, then into the kitchen. Nothing. I looked at the clock. It was already 6 o'clock. Connie should have been home. Unless, of course, she was trying to save our marriage. I checked my cell phone. No calls, no messages. I sank into the living room chair. What a damn anticlimax, I muttered to myself. I felt my anger start to rise again. It had been dormant, but was now waking up from its forced slumber. I looked at the picture of Connie and I on the mantel. I felt a surge of rage. I grabbed it and threw it across the room. The heavy silver frame punched through the wall and the glass shattered. "Get out!" I shouted. I stared at the wall, breathing heavily when I heard the phone ring. I grabbed the receiver. "Hello?" I shouted into the receiver. "Oh, I'm sorry. Is that you, Sal?" A woman asked in a trembling voice. "Yes, it's me. Now what do you want?" My tone was loud, direct, and damn angry. "It's Terry, Sal. She almost whispered. "Yes, Terry. I apologize for the bad timing. What can I do for you?" I breathed more slowly, trying to regain my composure. "It's Connie. She's here. And she's in a very serious condition. I can't figure out what happened, but something happened and she's not feeling well. She doesn't want to go home. She thinks you might hurt her somehow. I don't think she should be going anywhere right now, and certainly not driving." "Terry, is she there?" I interjected firmly. "Yes, of course. Ask her to talk to me if she won't. That's saying something, and you should do it too. Then ask her what happened and see what she says." I heard some mumbling. Then the voices got a little louder. Terry returned to his seat. "She won't say anything, Sal. I'm worried about her." "Terry, be patient. Just tell her I'll pick her up and see what happens." I heard her say the same thing I said to Connie, and then there was a shout from Connie. "Sal, I don't know what to tell you." "Terry, I know it's okay." "What do you mean, Sal?" "I know everything, Terry." "Oh my God." I heard Terry relay my words. Then another howl came through the earpiece, followed by sobs and another scream. "Sal, I'm so sorry." "Me too, Terry. I know all about it. I know about the bachelorette parties and how you and Phil fought about it." I heard her gasp. "Oh God, no." "Yes, I do. And while I'm at it, I know exactly who. And when I catch up with the little bastard, he's going to pay, trust me." "Sal, I'm sorry, but Phil couldn't convince them to stop. We both tried. I know we should have told you something, but we got ourselves into a bad situation." Terry spoke quickly, trying to get all the words out as quickly as possible. "Terry, rest assured, I don't blame you or Phil for what she did to Tony. I'm just upset that you didn't tell me sooner. I'm afraid it damaged our friendship. We won't talk about it anymore. Tell Connie I'm not coming to pick her up so she can relax, but her things will be packed and ready for her to pick up as soon as possible or they'll go in the trash can. I mean everything. She doesn't live here anymore. Lastly, she's getting some papers delivered today. I called the servers and asked them to forward them to your address, since I had a suspicion she might bolt to yours. I think they'll be there any minute now. Tell that whore to think before she does anything, and especially before she calls me or anyone else, got it?" "Okay, Sal." I hung up the phone and exhaled slowly. It was as if I'd been holding my breath as I spoke. All the anger had easily spilled out of me, and now there was nothing left. I had said everything that needed to be said at that moment. I was calm now. I wasn't yelling at anyone. Inside of me, I felt like I wanted this, but I was alone, and she wasn't around. Maybe she was long gone and I hadn't noticed. I missed that bitch. I hated and loved her at the same time. I replayed it over and over in my head. I must have been blind and stupid not to notice it. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed small signs that all was not well between us. The last few days had exhausted me, and sitting in the silence of the house, I suddenly felt exhausted. Things had really shifted, and now it was only a matter of time before the real shit started happening between us. I knew it was going to be very painful and personal. Sooner or later, I would have to confront the bitch, but I was in no condition to fight her right now, but it was going to happen soon. There would be no forgiveness, just as there would be no quartering. I sat down, uncorked the bottle of JD, and, filling the glass with ice, poured a hefty portion. I sipped the dark nectar and savored its flavor as it warmed my throat. I drank and somehow let my mind go blank, waiting for oblivion, or at least a state that would allow me to sleep. I slept like a log, and when I woke up, my mouth felt like a parrot cage, and my head hurt a little too. I took a shower, went downstairs, turned on the coffee maker, and took a sip of orange juice from the bag. Toast appeared in the toaster, and I paced the room, waiting for the coffee to brew. It was 7:30 when the first bell rang. Hello? Sal, it's Carlo. Are you okay? I'm sorry it's so early, but I just wanted to make sure you're okay and you haven't done anything stupid yet. Yeah, I'm fine. I just have a headache. You don't worry. I've already calmed down. She didn't go home, but went to Terry and Phil's. I talked to her and told her everything I knew, so now everything is out in the open. I haven't heard anything since about 7:30 last night. I thought I'd find out after she was served, but from what Terry said, she still wasn't in the best shape when she arrived. Carlo laughed. No surprise there, but it seems to be going well. I've heard from the lads that all is well on their end. The package has been delivered to the Midlands, but I don't expect to hear anything about it for a day or two. You know how it is. I won't be calling until tomorrow as I have some things to do today. The family sends their regards to you. Understood? Understood. Talk to you soon, my friend. You bet. Snape. I poured myself a coffee and sipped the black liquid. It was enough to clear my head of the alcohol-induced fog. I started thinking about what to do today and decided to call the office first and see how things were going. Then call a locksmith, deal with the bank, etc. Basically do whatever needed to be done. Although I didn't want to lose her, I knew I couldn't stay with her as the trust we had was gone, and I wasn't going to live in suspense wondering if she was cheating or not. No, it had to be done. I hadn't heard anything from Connie about the documents I knew had been given to her last night, though I was sure I'd hear something today once she got her act together. Just after 9, there was a quiet knock on the door. Well, this is it, I thought, heading for the door. When I opened the door, I saw Terry and Phil standing there and stared at them both in silence. Terry broke the awkward silence. Sal, we came to apologize. It's the least we owe you. Can we come in and talk? I stepped back and held the door as they stepped inside. I closed the door and pointed to the living room. They sat down together on the couch, and I settled into the chaise lounge across from them. Okay, what did you want to say? Sal, we're both very sorry, Phil began. I'm sorry too, Phil. Very sorry. Sorry that two people I considered my friends couldn't tell me that my wife left me for some stranger. Too bad my wife wanted to have fun with someone else. Hell, I regret a lot of things. I felt the anger rising in me again. Sal, we're sorry. We tried to tell her, well, both of them, but they wouldn't listen. I don't know what she was thinking. She's at our place now, still doesn't understand anything. But it seems like something bad happened yesterday before she came back. Terry pleaded. What do you mean, Terry? All I know is that I had to leave on Wednesday while the paperwork was being prepared. I couldn't even look at her. I went to a meeting in Leeds and then you called me. I assume you mean that something had happened between her and her lover, Tony? I wasn't going to volunteer any information or reveal my involvement in the case. We don't know. We haven't heard from my brother, Phil said. I've called him, but there's been no answer. He's not at the apartment either, and Connie can't say where he might be. Hell, she just mumbled something about being tied up and that he left her at the hotel. Come on, Phil. She must have said something more than that. What the hell happened? Obviously something happened. Did the bastard do something to her? It's not that I don't care. I don't care where that piece of garbage is now, but I'll tell you one thing. If I ever see him again, he better regret it. Understand? And you make sure he realizes it too. Phil and Terry looked at me, stunned by the fury of my tone. They had never seen me in such a state of rage before. Phil especially understood my words and was visibly shaken by the thought. Anyway, that asshole aside, how's Connie doing? I take it she was handed her papers last night? Yes, Sal. She seemed to calm down after a while, but when they served her food, she started up again. Sal, she kept mumbling something and didn't understand what had happened. She was in a lot of pain. When she came to us, she was upset, angry, but above all scared. And she won't say exactly what happened. Good, I thought. Hopefully this bitch will now remember every night what happened that night. Well, guys, I hate that bitch for what she did to me. So if she's in pain now, good, because I am too. She made her bed with this cretin, so let her stay with the bastard if I care. I'm done with her. They stared at me, unable to find the words to express their anger at Connie. Isn't there any way you can fix things with her, Sal? She made a mistake, but you two are so good together. Can't you at least try to mend your relationship? Divorce is a big step, Sal. Please talk to her first. She deserves at least that. Terry's voice broke as she pleaded with me, and I listened, looking into her tear-filled eyes. At least she was showing the emotions of a good friend. I paused, trying to look away from her eyes. I had always liked Terry, Phil too. And even after the way they acted in this mess, I couldn't deny that Terry's words needed to be taken seriously. I knew I was going to have to talk to Connie sooner or later. Okay, I'll talk to her, but first I want all her stuff gone. It'll just be her and me, and I'll call and let her know when and where. Is that okay with you? Terry rushed over to me and hugged me tightly, and Phil looked around. That's all we can ask for, and probably more than she can expect. Yes, Sal, thank you. I'll tell her to expect your call. Please don't leave her too long, Sal. That would be cruel. Phil just looked at me. His face was sullen. Sal, I'm sorry, but my brother is an asshole. You should kick his ass properly. I wouldn't blame you one bit if you did. I watched out the window as the couple left. They quickly got in their car and drove off in the direction of my soon-to-be ex-wife. I sat and pondered Terry's words. Of course, I needed to talk to Connie, but before I trusted that bitch at arm's length, I needed to cool down a bit. I poured more coffee, and the strong flavor lingered pleasantly in my throat. Filling another large mug, I grabbed my phone, called Sadie, and caught up with her. I spent the next half hour listening to Sadie talk about how well she was doing without me. What a woman. When she was done with that, she started telling me about Connie. God, it was like listening to my mom. Eventually, I was ordered to report to her place tonight for dinner with her and her husband, and by the time I hung up the phone, my ears still buzzing, I was sure she was at least half Italian. The rest of the day was spent rearranging locks, bedrooms, clothes, photos, anything I could remember during the move that could be thrown away, packed away, or destroyed. By the end of the day, my anger, though still raging, had subsided a bit. I sat there, exhausted from the emotional trauma, and tears flowed easily down my face. I realized that I would probably leave without ever talking to Connie, but subconsciously made the decision to dump the bitch. Everything was ready. All that was left was the final showdown, and I was under no illusions that I'd be as hurt as she was. Damn, bitch, how the hell could you do this to me? To us? I sat staring out the window and thought about how my marriage was crumbling. My heart ached, and only pain held back my anger, at least for the moment. I knew I should call, but as I sipped another GD, I decided I would do it in the morning. I was too tired to go a few hard rounds with this bitch today, and I wanted to be calm when I did. I had another restless dream. Early in the morning, again just before 7:30, I got a phone call. The phone came to life and bells jingled in my head, snapping my brain out of the semi-dream I had fallen into. Yes? I asked, as if stretching. Sal, it's me, Phil. Listen, I just got a call from the hospital. My brother's been there for a few days now. He's been beaten up pretty badly. He seems to be stable, but he's taken quite a beating. Both his arms and legs are broken, and his balls are pretty busted up. I don't know anything else, so that's about it. I hope you don't expect me to sympathize, Phil, the way I look at it. He's lucky he didn't meet me. I would have finished the job. Mark my words. If I ever see him again, it won't be anytime soon. Sal, I understand. I wouldn't blame you if you did, so I won't ask the question. He got what he deserved. You're a stand-up guy and a friend, and I'm sorry I wasn't as good a friend to you as you were to me. I know I can't undo what's done, but I just thought you might want to know about Tony, that's all. Phil, it's not your fault, remember that. It's just the way things are. Give my regards to Terry. Bye and thanks. Sure, bye. I hung up the phone and stared out the window at the quiet garden, where every now and then the birds would fly over to the bird table and eat the food I like to feed them. Sitting on the chaise lounge and watching nature through the glass always calmed me, helped me think, and today was no exception. I called Carlo on his cell phone to give him the news about Tony. He only snorted, but remarked that the job was well done. His guys did a great job and got the results he wanted. He laughed when I listed the list of injuries. Serious enough, but not life-threatening unless he did something stupid. Carlos said he was sure he could get the appropriate message to him just to make sure he behaved himself, but I didn't think that was wise at the moment. I was sure Phil would convey my feelings, which would be better and safer. We left it at that, and I went back to contemplating the window. As I sipped my second coffee of the day, the phone rang again, but I'd left it on the answering machine. Listening, I heard Connie's voice hesitantly leaving a message. "Sal, please call me. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I need to explain. I need you. I need to come home. I'm so sorry." There were sobs between the words, and with each word, my heart sank as if it was being strangled in my chest. When the message ended, I found myself breathing heavily. I wanted to pick up the phone, but my hand wouldn't reach it. Even the sound of that bitch's voice made me breathless. I knew I would have to do it today, but I wanted her to wait so she wouldn't think I was answering her text. I wandered around the house for another couple hours, and the house seemed somehow empty and deserted. I looked around. There were empty spaces where Connie's things had been. I called Sadie and had a couple guys come over with a van to move all her stuff. An hour later, the boxes and bags I had packed were stacked in the back of the van. As I watched the van pull away towards Connie, I knew that pretty soon my phone would ring when she picked up her stuff, and the realization that she had messed up would hit home hard. It was a one-way trip. The phone rang again. It was Terry. "Sal, Connie's stuff has arrived. Just letting you know we've taken it in. The guys apparently dropped most of it off at the warehouse." "Thanks for that, Sal. We only have the stuff you marked as personal." "Connie's still in shock. I know she called you earlier. Could you talk to her? Or call her back later?" "Take her to Terry. Let's get this over with." I waited a few seconds before I heard her voice. "Hello?" A frail voice reached my ear. "Connie? Oh my God, Sal, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "So you didn't think about the fact that you might get caught, huh?" I hissed venomously. "Sal, Leave it, Connie. Now you have the answer to all those questions you didn't even think to ask yourself the whole time you were having fun with that lowlife." "Sal, can't we—" She began again. "Do you really think you can say something to me that will make everything okay? Well, then do your best. I'm all ears. Can I come home and talk to you? Please?" I thought for a few seconds, trying to regain control of my emotions. Her voice kept me still, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, trying to break free. My breathing quickened as my mind fought for control. Finally, I took a deep breath. "Tonight, here, at 7 o'clock, whether you come or not, it's all the same to me. It's a one-time offer, and it's only valid until 5 minutes after 7. I'll listen, but I'm not promising anything." I heard her sigh at my rudeness and ended the conversation. I sat there listening to her voice, and I could feel the pain in her voice. I wondered if she felt mine. I sat and reflected on my marriage and how happy I thought we were. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but I was sure we were happy and that we'd never had anyone before this bastard. Then I thought about why I was so sure. Did I even know her? I hadn't suspected anything before, but that didn't mean she hadn't done it before. I felt confused again, trying to make sense of what I knew for sure, and the black cloud hanging over me that represented all the things I didn't know for sure. The clock chimed in the hallway. I knew it was past 6. I listened to the chime, and it told me that it was indeed 6:45. She, the slut, would be here soon, and I needed to control my emotions and prepare myself for what would undoubtedly be the final act of my marriage. The ringing of the doorbell disrupted my train of thought and brought me out of the abyss of self-pity I had sunk into. It slowly crept up on me as I tried not to think too deeply about what awaited me. I started asking myself questions over and over again. Why? 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 Freeing myself from my gloomy thoughts, I took a step towards the door. Swinging it open, I saw Connie. For the first time since that night at the hotel, her hair, though combed and neat, was pulled back, giving her face a rather gaunt look. She was wearing very little makeup, which further emphasized the pallor of her face. When she entered the lobby, her shoulders seemed to slump and sag. I followed her and noticed that few days matter when you are taken by surprise, as was the case with her. I watched her look around the living room, gasping and suppressing a sob, as she noticed the cracks in the walls and in the room where photos and memorabilia used to be stored. She looked up at me, covering her mouth with her hand, with tears in her eyes. "It's all gone," I said coldly. "If you look around the rest of the house, you'll see that there are a lot of empty spaces." I paused for a moment before saying anything more. She looked at me again, tears rolling down her cheeks. I didn't realize, Sal, I didn't mean for this to happen. I wasn't thinking. I know, but it's the result of your cheating, your infidelity, your extramarital sex with another man. It's all yours. I hope you're satisfied. The words poured out sincerely and venomously, each word dealing a direct blow to my soon-to-be ex-wife. She sat down on the couch and I poured her a strong vodka and tonic. Handing it to her, I remained emotionless. She sipped the drink while looking at me. I swirled the ice in the glass, and after taking a good sip, I leaned back in the chair looking at her. Okay, Connie, let's hear what you have to say. I'm sorry, Sal, I couldn't help it. I got in over my head and then it got addictive. Connie, just so you know, I talked to Terry and Phil and they filled in the gaps in my knowledge. I know what, where, and with whom. I just don't know why. I can't answer that question. It was so new and exciting. I guess I fell for his bullshit. But you had fun with him. Not once or even twice, but for weeks on end. I felt the rage building in me again, and I took a sip and a few deep breaths. She lowered her gaze to her feet. I know I can't justify what I did, Sal. I was wrong. Is there any way we can forget about it? I flinched when I heard the answer. What about Tony? What happened to him? Where's the bastard? Connie hesitated and finally raised her eyes to me, looking defiantly into them, trying to think of something to say. We got caught at the hotel that night. There were people there. I think 5 or 6, but Tony was just taken. One minute he was there and then he was gone. Did you set the whole thing up, Sal? I stared back at her. I sipped my drink again, looking at her and ignoring her question, though I wondered if she realized it was me in her face that night before she passed out. It was horrible. They took him, and he disappeared. Then they tied me up, and one man put a gun to my head. I know he pulled the trigger, but at that moment I lost consciousness. I was terrified I was going to die. When I came to, I was alone. She saw the smile on my face as I savored her discomfort. I watched as a shiver ran through her body, and my gaze was fixed on her eyes. So, slut, what happened to your lover? Sal, don't call him that. He's not my lover. Yes, I know I had sex with him, but I have no feelings for him. I love you, and only you. You love me so much you've been having fun with that creep for a week now. She leaned back on the back of the couch at my sudden and furious outburst. So, okay, slut. Tells me why I should give you the time of day since you've already proven yourself to be a liar and a cheat. How do I know everything you say is true? How the hell do you expect me to believe a single word you say? Tell me. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she saw and felt the depth of my anger at her for the first time. So have you been communicating with your lover? I asked again, deliberately choosing the word lover, knowing I'd already gotten her. I wanted to make her feel uncomfortable, make her lose her temper, make the bitch suffer the way I suffered. She looked at me through her tears. I haven't heard anything about him at all. All I know is that he's in a hospital somewhere, and that's all Phil said. I don't want to hear anything about him, that he ruined my life. I wish he was dead. Well, I couldn't agree more. I smirked. I sat there watching her face, and I had no doubt she was pissed about being caught and hung out to dry. And on her ass, too. She had screwed up, and now she was getting what she deserved. We sat in silence for a few minutes, each of us watching the other, waiting for the right moment. I took my time. I had so much rage built up in me that I was afraid to let it out. I wanted to slap her, but I had to control myself. She looked around the living room again, looking for something to change the subject. She sighed when she realized our wedding picture was missing from the mantel. As she stared at the empty spot, I met her gaze and looked at the dent in the wall to answer her question. She brought her hand up to her mouth. She stood up and moved across the room to each empty spot, and I sat and watched her absorb the missing memories. All traces of her seemed to disappear from the second floor. She sank down onto the couch. Sal, all is lost. Do we really have no chance? She looked at me, defeat glittering in her eyes. I took a deep breath. Connie, I loved you like no one else. What you did was rip my heart out and stomp on it. To do that to that jerk was disrespectful and showed complete disregard for my feelings and those of our friends. You were openly seen with him. In public, for God's sake. You don't need to tell me it was just sex, or that I didn't mean to hurt you. You did it, and now you have to pay for it. Your lover has already begun to pay for what he did, and rightly so. I will cripple him, but slowly. I will destroy you just as you destroyed what we had. Connie, we're done, finito. I'm sorry, but I haven't heard anything from you to make me change my mind, so if you sign the divorce papers, we can both move on with our lives. I don't want to see or hear from you anymore. I'm done with you. Now get out of my house, you cheating whore. She sat there in complete shock as my words reached her. She had really ruined everything, but right now, at this moment, I didn't care about her. Anger would help me deal with her. She gathered herself and got up to leave. I followed her to the door. When she opened the car door, she looked back at me and mumbled the word sorry. I raised my hand with two fingers pointing forward and my thumb shaped like a gun and watched the look of recognition on her face. Click! She shrieked and nearly fell over as she climbed into the car and I closed the door behind her. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next videos.